Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, fellow friends and citizens of Middle Earth. It's one of them situations where if you weren't aware, there was a little company called Embracer Group a few years back that bought all of the rights to The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the entire intellectual property. This includes the toys, the books, publishing of the video games, and of course the movies and the television shows. And as I'm sure all of you very well remember, or maybe you're trying to forget, the Rings of Power, the Amazon series that Embracer Group licensed out to them for $1 billion, if I don't remember correctly. Absolutely disastrous dumpster fire. And then of course we have the Smeagol game that was a broken absolute mess that literally I watched some of my favorite streamers lose their minds just trying to get through the game because it was such a hot mess. The studio that created the game was immediately shut down upon launch, and we'll probably never hear from their like again. So needless to say, Embracer Group and the people that they have been dumb enough to license out the IP of the great Professor J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and all of the wonderful works that comes with that and the universe that comes with that has now failed miserably and is having absolutely losing money, and it's a beautiful thing to see. Their sales have dropped sharply, and oh, I wonder why. Because see, when you allow the intellectual IP you own to be abused by a bunch of people that offered you a really big fat check to do something with it, and then they decide to turn that into a disastrous dumpster fire, guess what? Your merch doesn't sell, your video games don't sell, and all of the rest of your toys don't sell either. And guess what? That affects the entire IP, because television and movies is what the majority of fans consume, and a lot of people, it's their introduction to an IP and a franchise for the very first time. So if the first time they get introduced to an IP is something like Rings of Power that is an absolute disaster, a dumpster fire, and even apart from all of the things that completely and totally go away from J.R.R. Tolkien's great lore and works, it's still a hot garbage, disastrous dumpster fire of a show that makes literally no sense whatsoever. That's why it's been mocked and ridiculed so extensively. And don't even get me started on the Gollum game. But needless to say, ladies and gentlemen, this has resulted in the massive losses for the Embracer Group, who owns the IP to Lord of the Rings. So we're going to share this article from Deadline, see exactly how much of a disastrous dumpster fire this has been for them and how bad their sales are. And of course, what excuse they're using to blame it all on while we know the truth. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, ladies and gentlemen, because hopefully by the time you see this video, we've already crossed 1,200 subscribers. But if not, by all means, help us in that journey. Either way, help us in that journey going higher and grander and everything else. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Let us know whether or not you think Rings of Power is actually having to do something to do with the massive amount of sale loss Embracer Group's had, or if there's some other kind of excuse out there that maybe even we're not aware of. So, from Deadline.com, the Lord of the Rings firm Embracer Group sees entertainment sales fall sharply in Q1. Exit from Russia completed. Okay, congratulations. We don't care about that. But I mean, right here. Smeagol, the game, anybody? Boy, I wonder what happened with those sales. And this is once again one of the problems with companies just buying up IPs that they don't understand and they don't operate in, because Embracer Group is actually primarily a video game company. And so, of course, they licensed the rights out to this to all these other people that have literally damaged and caused severe harm to the IP of this. So guess what? That affects your sales of everything else. The Lord of the Rings IP owner, Embracer Group, saw net sales and entertainment and services division fall sharply in the fourth quarter of 2024. The Sweden-based company posted sales of $81 million, down 54% on year for April to June period. It posted sales of $81 million in one quarter for an intellectual property like Lord of the Rings that is literally a global phenomenon and is a book series that has been translated into more languages practically than the Bible. And you're telling me you only made $81 million in sales? I think them toys might end up at Ollie's here pretty soon. By the way, how is that Rings of Power merch selling? And it's down 54% year over year for April to June period. Overall net sales were down 24%, with lower numbers posted in its PC console games, mobile games, and tabletop game units. Oh, color us shocked there when you've got an abomination on the television screens like what the Rings of Power is. your game sales don't go well. And also, obviously, when you decide to license out an IP to a company that makes a completely and totally broken and destroyed game like Smeagol was, yeah, that's going to affect it. And guess what? If people aren't interested in good quality Lord of the Rings, if they're not seeing that and consuming that, they're not going to be interested in your mobile games or your tabletop games. That is just the way the modern era works. There are less libraries now than anything else before, and it's a sad state of affairs, boys and girls. Go out there, get your physical media, introduce your kids to the Lord of the Rings books. Losses before interest and taxes were 1.44 billion, which of course is in Swedish kronos or whatever they've got over there. 42 million gain a year. With all adjusted, it was 828 million versus the 1.67 billion. The results in the PC, console, and entertainment divisions were broadly in line with expectations due to lower release activity. Well, why did you have a lower release activity? I don't know, because the Smeagol game turned out to be a disastrous dumpster fire. Or maybe in your entertainment services, you probably didn't greenlight too many other shows because after you saw what happened with Rings of Power, you made sure that there probably should be some corrections made behind the scenes. We'll see how that ends up panning out with the Wars of Rohirrim. The company has been restructuring over the past year, and today it claimed it's already evident they're on the path towards significant and a debt reduction. I wonder why you had to restructure over the past year. The plans to split the company into 3 separately listed operations is progressing, while with games publisher Asmodee set to host a Capital Markets a day in the third quarter. The IP for The Lord of the Rings and Tomb Raider will be stored in Middle-earth Enterprises and Friends. The unit will remain with the current listed Embracer Group, which is due to be renamed. They've literally had to restructure their entire company because disastrous dumpster fire after disastrous dumpster fire. Embracer Group brought the rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings through a acquisition of Middle-earth Enterprises, a division of the Saul S. Horton Company, 2022. Later this month, the second season of Prime Video's Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power launches. Yeah, that's really going to go ahead and boost up those IP sales, isn't it? It's really going to help out with toys and merch and the tabletop game sales, isn't it? I bet you're going to work on a Rings of Power tabletop edition sometime soon, aren't you? Before the anime film The Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim follows this December, which I also have a lot of reservations about. We are not hearing such great signs coming out of that series either. The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum will be the first 2 of the films from Warner Brothers Discovery's New Line Cinema, Peter Jackson, Fran Walsh, and Philip Boyens. Now, those movies, because of who they have involved with them, are a sharp turnaround and also will be a complete and total embarrassment for the Rings of Power show out there because it's going to do so well and be so well done. Embracer, primarily a game business, noted today it's a new greenlit process to test new game tops, including immersive and authentic gameplay with Middle-earth world. Yes, we apologize that Gollum was such a disaster. We promise we're going to try to do better. Should also know the company has fully exited Russia. We don't really care about that. No employees or assets left over there. But needless to say, yes, this is what happens when you don't protect your IPs properly, when you don't vet the people involved with taking them and turning them into a video game, a television show, or anything else out there. Embracer Group, I hope you've learned your lesson to be much better stewards of the intellectual property rights that you have to the great work of Professor J.R.R. Tolkien's work. There's a certain steward of Gondor it sure looked like you were heading in the same direction of. Fortunately enough, hopefully, you will learn your place, learn to be good stewards, and we will get good quality Lord of the Rings intellectual properties in all forms going forward. But you have certainly learned your lesson, because at the end of the day, if you don't pay attention to your fans, if you don't respect your lore, you will suffer for it. And Embracer Group, you are the latest example of that in a long laundry list of companies that have done it. The real question is, have you learned your lesson, and will you help us make Lord of the Rings great again? Only time will tell, and after all, you get what you deserve.